They said no maid ever lasted in that castle, not one, but inside was a battlefield. At the heart of it was Lady Vivienne, beautiful, refined, and deadly with her words. She dismissed without warning, she berated without mercy, and her cutting remarks could wound deeper than any blade. She had driven away 12 maids in 8 months. Some fled in tears across the moors. Some vanished before dawn. One left her shoes behind in her haste to escape through the servants' entrance. Hello friends, thank you so much for stopping by. Please support me by subscribing to my channel, like and share this video to your family and friends. I truly appreciate your kind heart. So, let's begin. Then Moira walked in, red-haired, quiet, carrying nothing but a worn canvas bag and determination burning in her green eyes. She wasn't there to run, she wasn't there to please. She had a gravely ill son, nothing left to lose, and a weapon Lady Vivienne had never faced before. What Moira did in that castle didn't just change her life, it transformed the untouchable Lady Vivienne. Ballantrae Castle, perched on the windswept hills of Ayrshire, was the kind of place that made tourists pull over to take photographs. Ancient stone walls, perfectly manicured gardens, and luxury cars that gleamed like jewels against the grey Scottish sky. But beyond that picture-perfect exterior, the atmosphere was suffocating. The staff moved like ghosts. The groundskeeper avoided eye contact. Even Mrs. MacLeod, a cook who had once prepared meals for visiting royalty, measured every step as though treading on thin ice. That tension had a source. One person, Lady Vivienne Blackwood. Some called her Lady Ice, others Lady Perfection. And when she passed, the older staff muttered names in hushed Gaelic, words they dared not speak aloud in her presence. At 32, Lady Vivienne looked as though she had stepped from the pages of Tatler magazine. Tall, auburn-haired, and always dressed as if attending a Highland gala, even when merely walking to the conservatory. Her expensive perfume lingered long after she left a room. Her words lingered even longer. She didn't just give instructions, she commanded. She didn't just correct, she demolished with a glance or a sentence sharp enough to leave invisible scars. In this castle, her word was law. And in just 8 months, 12 maids had walked through those same iron gates for the last time. Some in tears, some in silence, one without her belongings. The castle itself wasn't the problem. The work wasn't the problem. The problem was her. Lady Vivienne was Sir Alistair Blackwood's second wife. The first had died in a riding accident years ago, leaving a silence in the castle that was never truly filled. Sir Alistair was a man who carried power like Highland nobility, nearly 60, with silver threading through his dark hair, 2 flourishing whiskey distilleries, and more properties than most people owned books. People spoke his name across Scotland with reverence. But what they whispered about most was the maids. Until Moira arrived. Nobody said hello. Nobody asked her name. Because they were weary of learning names that changed every fortnight. The head housekeeper, Mrs. Campbell, simply pointed to a bucket and muttered in her thick lowland accent. "Start with the stone floors. Her ladyship will be down presently." Moira didn't argue. She tied back her copper hair, picked up the mop, and began to work. She had one reason for being there. Her son Jamie, in and out of hospital in Glasgow. The medical bills were mounting like storm clouds, threatening to destroy what little she had left. Moira whispered to herself in Gaelic, "Fuirich Rees, even if they hurt you, endure it. 3 months, that's all. For Jamie." She was still cleaning the great hall when she heard it. Click, clack, click, clack. Heels, sharp ones, then silence. Moira looked up and there she was, Lady Vivienne standing at the top of the carved oak staircase in an emerald silk dressing gown, holding a crystal tumbler like she owned the entire Highlands. She looked Moira up and down, then at the mop, then at the bucket beside her, and without saying a word, she tipped it over. The soapy water splashed across the clean flagstones. Moira gasped, stepping back. Lady Vivienne approached, eyes cold as a Highland winter. "This is the 3rd time this week someone has blocked my path. I'm not in the mood. Clean it now." Moira didn't speak. She bent down, picked up the mop again. Her worn shoes were soaked. But she kept cleaning. From the servants' corridor, Mrs. Campbell whispered under her breath, "She will nae last. She looks too gentle." But what nobody knew was this. Moira had buried her pride long ago. She had scrubbed floors in houses where they treated her worse. She had pleaded with doctors for her son's life. She wasn't gentle. She was quiet fire. The next morning, Moira woke before 5. She swept the courtyard, polished the mullioned windows, and mopped the great hall again, this time with less water, no spillage, no mistakes. She hadn't come to play games. By 6:30, she was in the kitchen washing dishes beside Mrs. McLeod, the cook. "You're up early," Mrs. McLeod observed, surprised. Moira smiled gently. "Just trying to do my work properly." "Ah, just be careful. This castle, it's not about early mornings. It's about surviving her ladyship's tongue." Right on cue, they heard the footsteps. Measured, controlled, ominous. Lady Vivienne entered the kitchen wearing a burgundy silk robe tied tightly around her waist, her mobile phone in her manicured hand. "Where's my morning tea?" she asked sharply. Mrs. McLeod rushed forward. "I was just about to... I wasn't asking you." She cut in, turning her gaze to Moira. Moira wiped her hands and curtsied slightly. "I'll prepare it now, milady." Lady Vivienne narrowed her eyes. "Earl Grey, not too strong, not too weak, precisely right. Do you understand?" "Aye, milady. Because if I take one sip and it tastes like dishwater, you will regret your existence." Moira nodded. "Aye, milady." She selected the finest china, steeped the tea for exactly 4 minutes, and carefully arranged shortbread on a silver plate. She walked slowly, steady hands, quiet feet, up the stone steps to Lady Vivienne's chambers. She knocked softly. "Milady, your tea." "Enter." The room was immaculate. Tartan curtains, crystal bottles gleaming on an antique dresser. A small white terrier sat on the 4-poster bed like royalty. Moira placed the tray gently on the mahogany side table. Lady Vivienne didn't say thank you. She took the cup, sipped, paused. Moira's heart raced. Then Lady Vivienne smirked. "You're fortunate," she said. "You got it right." But just as Moira turned to leave, Lady Vivienne spoke again. "There's a watermark on the bathroom mirror. I despise watermarks." "I'll clean it straight away, milady." As Moira entered the ensuite, her eyes caught a faint mark on the antique mirror, likely from steam. Without hesitation, she reached for the cleaning cloth and began to work gently, carefully, focused. Then, thud. Her elbow brushed a perfume bottle. It wobbled. She caught it just in time, her breath catching. A quiet sigh of relief escaped her lips. But when she turned around, Lady Vivienne was standing in the doorway, arms folded. Without warning, she stepped forward and slapped Moira hard across the face. Moira's head turned with the force. "You're clumsy," Lady Vivienne said coldly. "I don't tolerate clumsy people." Moira's eyes stung, but she didn't cry. She lowered her head and whispered, "I'm sorry, milady." Then gently, she placed the perfume bottle back in perfect alignment with the others, hands trembling, spirit unbroken. "You'll clean the blue bedroom next," Lady Vivienne said, already settling back into her chair by the window, phone in hand. "And press the linens while they're on the bed. I detest wrinkles." Moira nodded again. "Aye, milady." As she left the room, Sir Alistair was standing in the corridor. Silver-bearded, impeccably dressed, calm countenance. He had heard everything. Their eyes met. He didn't speak, but Moira could see it, that flicker of sympathy. But she didn't need sympathy. She needed that wage. She walked past him without a word and went straight to the blue bedroom. Because in Moira's heart, one thing was clear. She would not leave. Not until Jamie could breathe easy. By the 3rd day, everyone in the castle was watching. Moira hadn't cried, she hadn't shouted, she hadn't packed her bag and fled like the others, But Lady Vivienne wasn't finished, not even close. She didn't like being ignored, she didn't like being studied, and something about Moira's silence felt like defiance, so she raised the stakes. First came the missing uniforms. Moira had just finished cleaning the library when she returned to her quarters to find her uniform gone. All that remained in the wardrobe was a revealing cocktail dress that obviously wasn't hers. Moira didn't say a word. She appeared wearing a clean jumper and her own tartan skirt. Mrs. Campbell gasped. "You're going out like that?" Moira simply replied, "It's clean. It's decent. It's enough." Later that day, Lady Vivienne came downstairs, took one look at her, and smiled, her slow, mocking smile. "Did you sleep in the stables, or are you dressing to match the mop bucket?" Some of the staff chuckled nervously. Moira didn't respond. She curtsied, picked up her cleaning supplies, and continued working. But the more Moira didn't react, the more unsettled Lady Vivienne became. Then came the accidents. Lady Vivienne spilled red wine on the pristine Persian rug and acted as though it was a mistake. But it wasn't. She did it deliberately, just to test Moira's patience. Moira didn't ask questions. She didn't complain. She quietly fetched stain remover and began cleaning. Once, Lady Vivienne even accused Moira of breaking a Waterford crystal vase that she herself had knocked over. Still no reaction. Moira simply said, "I'll clean it up, m'lady." Even Sir Alistair began to notice. One evening he sat quietly in the castle's walled garden with his newspaper when he saw Moira sweeping near the rose bushes. Her skirt was torn at the hem. Her face looked weary, but her hands were steady. "Moira, isn't it?" he asked, voice low. "Aye, sir," she said, stopping to greet him properly. "Are they treating you well here?" he asked carefully. She paused, then smiled. "They're treating me like life treats many of us, sir, but I'll manage." He blinked, impressed by her quiet dignity. That night, Sir Alistair looked at Vivienne and said, "Why is that girl still here? With the way you've treated her, most people would have fled by now." Vivienne took a slow sip of her wine, smiled slightly and said, "She's still useful. That's why she remains." But even she could feel it. The energy in the castle had shifted. Moira didn't fight back with words or tears. She fought back with presence, with patience, with that quiet, unshakable dignity that couldn't be bought or broken. And that was starting to unnerve Lady Vivienne. It was Saturday morning. The Highland sky was heavy with clouds, and a gentle rain tapped against the diamond-paned windows of the castle. Inside, the usual tension seemed oddly absent. No sharp words, no slamming doors, no shouted commands. Moira noticed. She had just finished dusting the portrait gallery when she passed by an ornate mirror and saw a reflection that made her stop. Lady Vivienne, seated on the cold stone floor of the corridor, barefoot, her silk scarf half fallen from her head, makeup smeared, mascara running as though tears had been hastily wiped away. Moira froze. She had never seen the woman look human. Lady Vivienne didn't see her yet. She was staring at her reflection in the mirror's surface, almost as if she didn't recognize the woman looking back. Her wine glass from the night before still sat on the floor beside her. Her phone lay silent. Her designer shoes were kicked aside. Moira wanted to retreat. This wasn't her concern, but something deeper than duty held her in place. She stepped forward quietly. "M'lady?" Lady Vivienne turned sharply. Her face, usually fierce and composed, looked fractured, vulnerable even. "What do you want?" she asked roughly, wiping her face quickly. Moira curtsied. "Forgive me, m'lady. I didn't mean to disturb." She placed a small, neatly folded, clean handkerchief beside her on the floor. Then she turned to leave. "Wait." Moira stopped. Vivienne stared at her, eyes red, voice unsteady. "Why do you stay?" she asked. Moira was quiet for a moment. Then she said gently, "Because I need Tay. For my son. You could find another position." Moira smiled faintly. "Maybe, but they wouldn't pay like this one. And the hospital in Glasgow doesn't accept promises. Vivienne looked at her, studying her face. You're not afraid of me? Moira hesitated, then spoke the truth. I used to be afraid of life, but when you've held your dying child's hand in a hospital ward, nothing else can truly break you again. Lady Vivienne looked away. For a long while, she said nothing. Then quietly, she whispered something Moira never expected to hear. They said I wasn't good enough. Moira's brow furrowed. Who, milady? Alistair's friends, his family, even the church congregation. They said I was too young, too ambitious, that I was just a trophy wife with no substance. Her voice cracked slightly. I thought if I could control everything, if the castle was perfect, if the staff were flawless, if I never let anyone get too close, maybe I'd feel in control of something. Moira said nothing. She simply sat beside her on the cold stone floor. Not too close, not too far. Not to advise, not to argue, just to be present. And for the first time, Lady Vivienne didn't tell her to leave. The next day, Sunday morning, came with soft Highland light and an unusual peace within the castle walls. For the first time since Moira's arrival, no one shouted her name. There were no harsh words, no cutting remarks from the gallery above. The castle, for once, felt as though it could breathe. Moira swept the front steps, humming quietly to herself. A soft Gaelic lullaby her mother used to sing when times were hard. She didn't even notice Lady Vivienne standing behind her, listening. Is that a Highland song? Vivienne asked, her voice calm. Moira turned, surprised. Aye, milady, from long ago. Vivienne nodded. Then, without another word, she turned and walked back inside. No insult, no command, just acknowledgement. The staff noticed immediately. In the kitchen, Mrs. MacLeod whispered to the butler. Did she just pass me without complaining about the porridge? He nodded. She even said good morning. The groundskeeper, Hamish, asked Moira that afternoon, What did you give her ladyship? She smiled at me this morning. Moira smiled faintly. Sometimes people dinna need food. They just need someone not to leave. That evening, something extraordinary happened. Moira entered the master bedroom with the evening tea, the usual routine. But this time, Lady Vivienne wasn't on her phone. She wasn't issuing orders or examining her nails. She was sitting by the window, holding a small framed photograph of Sir Alistair and his late first wife. Her expression was unreadable. Moira placed the tea gently on the side table. Thank you, Lady Vivienne said quietly. Moira froze. It wasn't just that she said thank you. It was how she said it, like someone setting down a heavy burden. You're the first maid who didn't try to impress me, she added after a moment. You just did the work. Moira spoke softly. I'm not here to impress, milady. I'm here to survive. Vivienne looked at her properly this time. You've been through a great deal, haven't you? Moira smiled sadly. So has everyone, milady. Some just hide it better. Lady Vivienne nodded slowly. Then, to Moira's shock, she said, Tomorrow, take the day off. Visit your son. I'll arrange transport. Moira's eyes widened. Milady? You heard me. Go and see him. Return by evening. Moira blinked. It had been 3 weeks since she'd seen Jamie. She hadn't dared ask for time off, too afraid of being dismissed. Thank you, she whispered, her voice nearly breaking. Lady Vivienne turned back to the window. Don't thank me. Just don't stop being yourself. The next morning, Moira stood at the castle gates holding a small envelope. Inside, £200 wrapped carefully in tissue. Lady Vivienne had placed it beside her breakfast tray with a note that simply read, For travel and whatever he might need. Moira's hands trembled as she held it. It wasn't just about the money. It was the kindness. Soft, quiet, almost shy. She took the train from Ayr to Glasgow, then a bus to the Royal Hospital for Children, where Jamie had spent the last month under careful observation. Jamie was 8, slight, gentle. His respiratory condition made him fragile, but his smile was sunshine on the darkest day. When Moira entered the ward, Jamie looked up. "Mom!" Moira rushed to him and knelt beside the bed, holding him close. "My wee man, I missed you so much." They sat together for hours, Moira gently feeding him soup and telling him stories, not of pain, not of struggle, but of hope. Then she pulled out a small, inexpensive but colorful toy car she'd bought from the hospital shop. "Look what I found for you." Jamie grinned. "Mom, you said you'd bring me home when you got proper money. Is it soon?" Moira paused. She held Jamie's small hand and whispered, "Very soon, my love. God is helping us. Just hold on." What she didn't know was that Lady Vivienne had quietly asked the driver where she'd gone, not out of suspicion, but curiosity. When the driver returned, he simply said, "She went to the children's hospital in Glasgow. The boy is there. The nurses all know her." Lady Vivienne didn't respond. She just nodded, then went back to her room. That night, while brushing her hair at her dressing table, she stared into her mirror for a long time. She thought of Moira's quiet dignity, of the way her hands had shaken slightly when serving tea, of the way she never complained, of her son, ill yet smiling. She thought of herself, of the woman she had become, of the apologies she'd never given. And then she cried, not loudly, just 2 tears, silent. But they were the first in years. Monday morning came like any other. Sunlight filtered through the stained glass windows. The kitchen hummed softly as Mrs. McLeod stirred broth in her pot. But something fundamental had shifted, like the very air had exhaled. For the first time in weeks, Moira walked into the castle without that weight on her shoulders. She had held Jamie again. She had seen him smile, and somehow she had glimpsed a different side of Lady Vivienne. As she tied her apron and picked up her cleaning supplies, Mrs. Campbell walked past and stopped. "You really came back?" she asked, surprised. Moira smiled. "I said I would." From upstairs, Lady Vivienne's voice called out, but softer this time. "Moira, please come." Everyone in the castle paused as if someone had pressed pause on a film. Moira went up to the master bedroom, heart steady. Lady Vivienne sat at her vanity, brushing her hair. "You're back early," she said, not looking up. "Aye, milady. I left the hospital at 6 this morning." There was a pause. Then Vivienne turned, holding a cream envelope. "This is for Jamie's treatment." Moira blinked. "Milady?" "Don't argue. Just take it." She handed her £500 in cash. Moira's hands shook. She opened her mouth, but no words came. Lady Vivienne looked away, almost uncomfortable. "You said something that day," she said, "about how life can break you until nothing frightens you anymore." "Aye, milady. Well, I think I've been fighting the wrong people." Moira looked at her gently. "Pain makes us do things, milady, but it doesn't have to make us cruel." That sentence hung in the air like Highland mist. Soft, lingering, transformative. Later that afternoon, Lady Vivienne walked into the kitchen and called Mrs. McLeod by name. The old cook nearly dropped her wooden spoon. "Aye, milady? Your broth smells wonderful," Lady Vivienne said. "What herbs did you use today?" Mrs. McLeod stammered. Just thyme and parsley, milady." Lady Vivienne nodded. "It's perfect. Thank you." The staff couldn't believe it. The silent fear that used to hang in the castle like Highland fog was lifting. Even Sir Alistair noticed that evening. As he sat in the library reading his newspaper, he watched his wife pass by. No shouting, no insults, no icy glares. Then he looked at Moira, who was carefully polishing the antique side table. He folded his paper and said, "Thank you, Moira." Moira looked up, surprised. "Sir?" "For staying," he said. "You've accomplished something no one else could." Moira smiled faintly, curtsied, and continued cleaning. But her heart was full. Because in that moment, she realized something profound. She hadn't just come to clean a castle. She had come to heal wounds, and she had done it one quiet day at a time. 2 weeks passed, and in those 2 weeks, the castle transformed completely. No shouting, no tension, no walking on eggshells. Staff began to smile again. The groundskeeper whistled while tending the roses. Mrs. McLeod even made shortbread for everyone on Friday afternoon, the first time in 8 months. But the biggest change was in Lady Vivienne. She no longer barked orders. She said please. She said thank you. She didn't just walk past Moira anymore. She stopped to ask how Jamie was progressing. And then one Thursday evening, she did something nobody could have imagined. She called Moira into the drawing room. "Dress well tomorrow," she said. Moira frowned. "M'lady, you're accompanying me somewhere." "Where?" "To the ladies' charitable luncheon in Edinburgh." Moira's eyes widened. "M'lady, I couldn't go to such an event." "Yes, you can," Vivienne said calmly. "You'll come with me. I want you there." Moira was speechless. Lady Vivienne continued. "There are some women I need you to meet. Doctors, charity workers. One of them runs a children's medical foundation. She might be able to help with Jamie's treatment." Moira's eyes began to glisten. "M'lady, I didn't even have—" "I've already arranged something," Lady Vivienne interrupted gently. "It's in your room." When Moira returned to her quarters, there it was. A soft blue dress, simple and elegant, folded beside a matching cardigan. Moira touched it slowly. She sat on the bed and wept quietly, not from sadness, but because someone finally saw her worth. The next day, Moira rode in the back of Lady Vivienne's Range Rover. The driver opened the door for her as though she belonged. At the event, people stared. Lady Vivienne walked into the elegant Edinburgh hotel with Moira by her side, not as a servant, not as a worker, but as a woman who mattered. "This is Moira," Vivienne said to one of the ladies at their table. "She's stronger than most women I know, and her son is a fighter." The woman smiled. "I run a children's heart and lung foundation. Perhaps we can help. Send me his details." Moira stood there, overwhelmed with gratitude, and in that moment, she knew this wasn't just employment anymore. This wasn't just survival. This was the beginning of something miraculous. The following Monday morning started like any other. Moira was in the kitchen gently preparing vegetables when her old mobile rang. Unknown number. She wiped her hands on her apron and answered. "Hello? Good morning. Is this Miss Moira, mother of Jamie?" Aye, this is she. This is Dr. Fraser from the Children's Medical Foundation. Lady Vivienne referred you to us after the luncheon last week." Moira stood slowly, the vegetable peeler falling from her hand. "Aye, doctor. I remember her mentioning something. Well, we've reviewed your son's case, his test results, his medical history, and we'd like to sponsor his treatment fully at no cost." Silence. Moira gripped the kitchen counter. I'm sorry, doctor. What did you say?" "You heard correctly," the doctor said with warmth in her voice. "We're covering everything. Procedures, medications, rehabilitation, transport. We'll even assign a specialist nurse for follow-up care." Moira dropped to her knees. Tears streamed down her cheeks as she whispered, "Thank you, God, thank you." Mrs. McLeod rushed in, alarmed. "What's happened?" Moira looked up, eyes red but radiant. "They're paying for Jamie's treatment. Everything." The entire kitchen erupted in joy. Even Hamish, who'd come in for tea, paused and said, "Moira, do you mean it?" Moira nodded, still crying, still overwhelmed. "Lady Vivienne, she made it happen." That evening, Moira entered Lady Vivienne's room quietly, carrying the customary cup of tea. She placed it on the table and turned to leave. But Vivienne stopped her. "Did they call?" Moira turned slowly. "Aye, m'lady. This afternoon." She couldn't hold back the tears. "They're covering everything. Jamie can have the treatment. He might actually live." Vivienne's eyes softened. I told you not to thank me. I have Ty, Moira said, wiping her tears. Because you didn't have Ty help, but you did. Lady Vivienne looked away for a moment, then said softly, Helping you helped me. Moira smiled through her tears. I didn't understand. I used to think strength meant controlling everything, but I watched you suffer quietly, serve gently, and still smile. She looked Moira in the eye. You reminded me what real strength looks like. From that day forward, the castle began to treat Moira differently. Mrs. Campbell deferred to her opinion. Mrs. McLeod saved the choicest portions for her plate. Even Hamish now greeted her with a respectful, Good morning, Miss Moira. She was still officially a maid, yes, but in truth, she had become the heart of the home. 2 weeks later, the hospital room was filled with quiet beeping sounds and steady breathing. Jamie lay peacefully in crisp white sheets, his chest rising and falling normally. The procedures had been successful. Moira hadn't left his side for 3 days. She slept in the chair beside his bed, prayed through the night, and cried silent tears when the doctor said, He's responding beautifully. The worst is behind us. On the 4th morning, she dressed in her cleanest clothes and prepared to return to the castle. She kissed Jamie's forehead and whispered, Mummy will be back soon. Rest well, my angel. As Moira arrived at the castle gates, Hamish stood straight and opened them with a wide smile. Miss Moira, welcome home. Inside, the grounds looked freshly tended, flowers arranged perfectly. The air felt expectant. She walked toward the castle and paused. All the staff were waiting in the courtyard, the groundskeeper, the butler, the housekeeper. Even Mrs. McLeod stood in the center, beaming like a proud aunt. Before Moira could speak, the main door opened. Lady Vivienne stepped out. She wasn't wearing her usual fine clothes. Today she wore a simple green dress. No elaborate jewelry, just a gentle smile. Moira, she said warmly. Welcome home, Moira curtsied. Thank you, milady. I have something to show you. She walked over to a small table set up under the ancient oak tree. On it sat a framed document covered in protective film. She lifted it and handed it to Moira. Moira opened it and froze. Promotion certificate, head of household management. Moira looked up in confusion. Lady Vivienne continued, You've earned it. You'll oversee the staff now. Better wages, better quarters, and full medical support for Jamie moving forward. Moira couldn't speak. She just stared at the certificate. Then at Lady Vivienne. Why me, milady? She finally asked, voice trembling. Because you did what no one else could, Vivienne replied. You didn't just clean the castle, you cleansed the atmosphere, the fear, the pain. She paused. And you stayed when I gave you every reason to leave. Moira covered her mouth, eyes full of tears. Mrs. McLeod stepped forward with a tray of fresh scones. Let's celebrate properly, she said, laughing. The entire staff applauded and cheered. Even Sir Alistair came down to shake Moira's hand. You have done remarkable work, Moira. Thank you for bringing peace to our home. Moira couldn't stop the tears anymore. But this time they weren't tears of pain. They were tears of recognition, of dignity restored. Moira had never lived in quarters like these before. The small room she used to share with cleaning supplies was gone. Now she had a proper apartment, clean, painted, with a window overlooking the gardens and heating that actually worked. But what touched her most wasn't the new accommodation. It was the way people looked at her now. Not as the maid, not even as the survivor, but as the woman who brought healing. Every morning, the staff sought her guidance. Mrs. Campbell asked for her input. Even Hamish stood straighter when speaking with her. But the most significant change was Lady Vivienne. She no longer commanded with coldness. She consulted. She started asking Moira about Jamie's health, his schooling, even his favorite stories. But one night, something deeper occurred. Moira was in the kitchen preparing tomorrow's duties when Lady Vivienne entered quietly. No makeup, no silk, just her dressing gown and bare feet. Do you have a moment? she asked. Moira nodded. They walked together to the castle's stone terrace. The Highland moon was brilliant. Night birds called softly across the moors. Then Vivienne said, "Do you know I was once a serving girl too?" Moira turned sharply. "Milady?" "I was 14, Vivienne said, her voice distant. "My mother passed away. My father, well, he wasn't the paternal type. I ended up in a wealthy house in Edinburgh. The lady of the house despised me. She didn't strike me. She didn't even insult me openly. But she made sure I felt like an unwanted stray." Moira's heart ached. "I promised myself that one day I'd be the lady, that I'd never be vulnerable again, that nobody would ever treat me as insignificant." She looked away, shame flickering in her eyes. "I became strong, cold, sharp. I thought that was power. But when I met you, I saw something else." Dear friends, thank you so much for watching. Please support me by subscribing to my channel, and don't forget to like and share this video. It means the world to me. Take care of yourself and never forget how much you're loved. I can't wait to see you in the next video. Sending you all my love.